Now the guys at Lowrance a few months ago sent me the Active Target transducer and module to try it on my little 1550 Stabie. Really, I wanted to have a chat to you about how effective it is for New Zealand fishing conditions. Now in America, a lot of the boats, they're fishing in lakes and freshwater. They have electric trolling motors mounted on the bow and they fish forward of the boat a lot of the time. Now in New Zealand, although there's a few boats like that, majority of the boats fish from the stern or from the aft of the boat. The first thing we had to look at was how we're going to mount the Active Target. I found the best position is to actually put it sort of midships. My boat's only 15.5 foot that I've got it mounted on here, and I rigged it up on a ram mount on the gunnels with a pole with the transducer connected to that. Now fitting your Active Target is quite a simple procedure. You've basically got this little module which I've put in behind the back of my unit here, and you connect it up to your sounder. It will connect into quite a majority of the Lowrance units and a few of the Simrad. So I've got an HDS 9 here and I just connected it into that, updated the software, and away I went. It's got a long cable that runs the length of the boat, no problem. The ram mount is really, really good. It's a good solid mount and you can set up your pole on that really easily, and probably the ideal way if you're not fitting it on your electric trolling motor. Now the Active Target transducer, what's special about it is it basically is showing you a real-time picture compared to a delayed picture which you get on other fish finder transducers. So what you're seeing is happening at the moment.
There are three views or modes on the Active Target transducer. You've got forward view, so you can see fish and structure that are directly in front of your transducer. Down view lets you know the depth and what's directly below the transducer. And scout view. Scout, as it says, gives you a wide view of what structure and fish are in front of you and what area you should be casting. The different views are attained by just adjusting the simple nuts on your transducer and adjusting the setting on your screen. Having it set in auto will select the mode that you're actually in.
And I tend to use forward looking the most, because what that does is it gives me, and when I say forward looking, it's usually out of the stern of the boat, and I'll see fish or see if there's any structure behind me. So what's good about Active Target is you can definitely see if there's fish there. You will literally see them swimming, you can see their tails, and you can get a representation of the size of the fish. So how I've been using Active Target is in a number of ways, and I've found it very, very useful. So I do a lot of live baiting, for kingfish mainly, in water sort of from a few meters up to about 15 meters. So quite shallow water live baiting, and I troll live bait. So with the Active Target, if you set it at the stern of the boat when you're trolling your live baits, you can see the depth that they're swimming at, which is very handy. So it stops you from fouling up if you go over any weed or rocks. You can also see if fish come and have an investigation of your bait, and if they don't take it, you maybe can change your tactics to get a bite. Interestingly, I was out with the boys from Lowrance and we were trolling live baits, and we were trolling along and we had a shag dive down, and you can actually see the shag dive down to have a look at the live bait, and then a kingfish came up from underneath and grabbed it, and we were hooked up and we were ready because we saw all the action happening on the screen. So very, very handy. Another way I use the Active Target is when we're catching bait, whether it's mackerel or kahawai. If you've got a school of fish on the surface, they're easy to see, but when they sound, you can't see them anymore. And you can actually use the Active Target. You can actually scope it around and find where that school of fish is sitting, and you'll see them, and you can cast into them and fish for them below the surface of the water without any surface activity and catch them. And that's really, really handy. And when you're bait fishing for jack mackerel and slimy mackerel and things like that, kohuru, it's always handy to know A, if there's bait there, and B, if you're fishing in the right spot, the right depth with your sabikis. And the Active Target does that for sure. You will really see bait fish. Now, probably the biggest and most successful advantage I've had with the Active Target is when I've been shallow water soft baiting. And you can drift up if you're fishing washes or areas where it's sandy, and you can actually see your soft bait going down, and you can see if there's fish chasing it or swimming in the zone that you're casting. And that's really handy if you're fishing a little nook or cranny in the rocks. You can see if there's fish actually holding in there, and you can cast your soft baits to those fish, and you will see your lure descend and make sure it's at the right depth to start retrieving and catch those fish. So that's another really handy advantage. And just lately I've been doing the same thing with squid fishing. So I've been going along in very shallow water, sort of 2 to 4 meters, checking things out with the active target, seeing if there's anything. You will see the squid there, casting my jigs, and you can see the jigs sometimes going down and working them, so it's good so you don't hang up on the weeds again, and you'll actually see the squid come in and take the jig. So active target is very, very functional. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not. It does have a couple of things that are not perfect for every fisherman. The main thing is it doesn't work in super deep depth, so you're not going to go and active target for harpooker fishing or anything like that. The good depth range and distance that I've found is around 30 to 40 meters is its sort of maximum, which is good for your general bottom fishing, soft baiting, shallow water fishing and trout fishing. And here's a classic example of why I like the active target. I was fishing in the Kaipara Harbour and we're bait fishing on the anchor, and we put our burley down. You can actually see fish swimming around there, and we're fishing with flasher rigs and we're casting them just a few meters behind the boat, and you can actually see the fish coming up, and they're gurnard, snapper, kahawai, and they're attacking the baits, and you can actually see them getting hooked up and swimming to the surface. So active target has a very, very good place in New Zealand fishing. Using the active target in my HDS 9, if I add another SD card to my little slot down here, it has 2 SD card slots, I can set it up so I can actually record the screen of what's going on in the active target, and that makes for good watching if you're going to a particular area, if you're going over structure or anything like that, and also to see if any fish have come along and you miss them because you are not paying attention. So active target, real-time fishing, you can see what's going on with your baits, with the bottom, with structure, with lures. So it does really give you an aid of knowing if there's fish there, if they're chasing your lures or baits. Definitely puts you on the right track.